Many years ago, Aristotle wrote a book called The Rhetoric. It was about 350 BC, and in it he mentions the 5 canons of rhetoric, strong measurements, so that when you prepare to give a public speech, you can know beforehand whether or not your speech will impact the audience if you think through these 5 things. So we come to invention, organization, style, delivery, and memory. The first of these is the invention of your public speech. Choose a subject that is important to you. Narrow it down to a subject with a very specific topic or thesis sentence that you can bring to life for your audience. Decide on a clear purpose or goal and gather the information through research as evidence. So let's start looking at that evidence. Type of evidence. You need to discover the truth, not simply your opinion. And as such, there are facts that you can discover. Truth that is reduced to words. Information that is verifiable, that the audience can seek out. It is best when you give them the particular places where you got the facts, so you cite your sources. Then we can look them up and trust you, even if we don't trust the source. There are also statistics, truth reduced to numbers. So in facts, you have truth reduced to language. In statistics, you have truth reduced to numbers. Numerical facts are based on a systematic collection of quantitative data, and that can represent reality. You also have some that are specific to sermons, such as sacred literature. We would recite the Bible and limit it to the Bible, as opposed to all sacred literature. However, use whatever your audience considers a strong source. And you can cite the specific reference, especially if you don't think the audience will recognize it, or as Martin Luther King Jr. did with Amos 5:24, he simply goes in and talks about justice rolling down like waters. And that allusion, without reference, most of his audience could make the connection, even if today we have lost some of that ability. There's also church traditions. In some churches, significant authority rests in past and current thought. So to cite church leaders may be a very good thing to do in many church traditions. If you're a Catholic, citing the Pope. If you are an evangelical, citing Billy Graham are good things for audiences to note. We also have definition, stating what something is or what a word or phrase or symbol means is something that is strong support. When talking through biblical passages, because of the gap in time and culture, many things need to be defined that the original audiences would not have to. There are also explanations, the logical why, statements that provide reasons or causes for something. These are usually needed, especially as transitions between points. And then you have the examples and individual instances, specific cases. This is often the strongest evidence that people accept the most readily. So give us factual, personal, expert, or hypothetical instances and examples. Help us to be able to picture what you are saying with those. And those verbal accounts are very, very necessary and strong in order to convince us. So we want good, solid examples, descriptions, and word pictures. There's also opinion and testimony, quotation or statements from experts or lay people that express views, judgments, or beliefs of someone else. And please cite the source in your speech. Tell us who you are talking about, not just there once was a man who said, or a woman stated that. Tell us their name. Stephen Hawking said. That will give us the ability to follow who it is. Narratives and stories, first and third person accounts, real or fictional. Jesus was a master storyteller. He used many parables and stories. Then you have analogies, things that are like or as, metaphors, things that represent others. Comparing and contrasting is something that helps add beauty and power to your speech. So use evidence. This is just the beginning of different kinds of evidence. Then, still within the canon of invention, have you reduced your topic to a thesis statement? One sentence, not a thesis paragraph, not a thesis movement, but a thesis statement. Significant to the audience and the speaker, clearly stated, narrowly focused, gives direction to the entire speech, and is supportable by evidence that you cited. Do you have a good, solid thesis statement? Thesis statement should be clear and concise. Some of the tests, if an audience remembers only one thing, what would you want them to remember? That should be your thesis. If audience members goes to your boss and tells them what the message was, what would you like them to say? That would be your thesis statement. If you have to pay for each word in the thesis, what would it say? That's your thesis statement. Is it understandable and dynamic enough to keep Joya's interest? Joya was a young girl in my first Sunday school class. I was only 15 when I started teaching Sunday school, and there was a young girl who had gotten a disease that left her emotionally and mentally at about 4 years old. Even though her body was getting older, her spirit never did. And it was really hard to keep Joya's interest. Is my presentation dynamic enough to keep her interest? Is it simple enough to keep it? Is it also good enough to keep Scott's interest, who later became a doctor? So can you keep the smartest and the simplest engaged in your subject? The thesis statement should do that. A poor thesis statement, the media has too much violence. Much better, commercialized violence propels us into a culture of victims and perpetrators. Use some beauty, not just brevity. Give it something that we can relate to as an audience. And the next part of invention is purpose statements. To inform or to teach, Augustine thought that was the most noble form of public speaking. To convince or persuade, Aristotle thought that was the most noble form of public communication. To inspire or entertain, Quintilian believed that was the most noble form. And to move to action, to get people to do something, Cicero believed that was the most important. So, what is your most significant purpose? I think it comes down to your subject matter, you as the speaker, your audience, and the occasion. To inform, Augustine is at the start of what became the Dark Ages, a time when people desperately needed knowledge. Aristotle came from a democracy where everything happened through persuasion and influence. Quintilian lived in a time where if you spoke your mind, you could easily lose something very important, your head. And Cicero lived at the beginning of that Roman Empire and that time when the expansion and action was what life was about. So no one purpose statement is good enough for all. However, having a purpose is necessary, or you won't accomplish anything.